Welcome to GorillaEther, your bridge between traditional finance and the decentralized future. We provide blockchain tutorials, Web3 education, and investment services that demystify on-chain finance and empower your financial literacy. Join us as we explore the philosophical shift from off-chain to on-chain, because understanding the future starts here. Today, we're diving into a massive development from the SEC that just dropped on October 3rd, 2025. This is something the crypto and investment advisory industry has been waiting years for, and it's finally here. We're talking about the SEC's no action letter on digital asset custody. And trust me, if you're an RIA, if you manage a fund, or if you're just interested in institutional crypto adoption, you need to understand what this means. So grab your coffee, smash that like button, and let's get into it. All right, let's start with the headline. What exactly did the SEC do here? The SEC's Division of Investment Management issued a no action letter, and here's the big takeaway. They confirmed that registered investment advisors and registered funds can now treat certain state chartered trust companies as banks for custody of crypto assets. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why does this matter? What's the big deal about calling something a bank? Here's why this is huge. Under securities law, RIAs and funds are required to keep client assets with something called qualified custodians. And for years, there's been this massive gray area about whether state chartered trust companies, especially those focused on crypto, qualify as these custodians. What the SEC is saying now is, look, if you use these state trust companies for digital asset custody, we're not going to come after you. We're not recommending enforcement action. That's regulatory clarity that the industry has been desperately waiting for. This opens the door for institutional money to flow into crypto custody solutions with confidence. Now, to really understand why this is groundbreaking, we need to talk about the existing custody rules. Don't worry, I'll keep this simple. There are two main pieces of legislation we're dealing with here. First, the Investment Company Act of 1940, specifically Sections 17F and 26A. This law says that registered funds need to place their securities and investments with specified custodians. And the main type of custodian? Banks. Second, the Investment Advisors Act has what's called the custody rule, Rule 206 4-2. This requires RIAs who have custody of client funds to maintain those assets with a qualified custodian. Again, that includes banks. So both laws keep coming back to this word banks. But here's where it gets interesting. Both acts technically define a bank to include state chartered trust companies. But, and this is a big but, only if three conditions are met. One, a substantial portion of their business involves receiving deposits or exercising fiduciary powers similar to national banks. Two, they're supervised by state or federal authority. Three, they're not operated to evade the acts. So basically, they're not trying to game the system. For years, the industry has been like, okay, but do state trust companies actually meet this definition, especially for crypto? The SEC has been pretty quiet on this until now. So why is the SEC suddenly giving this relief? What changed? The division acknowledged something really important. State-chartered trust companies have become critical providers, their words, not mine, critical providers of custody services for crypto assets. The demand for institutional-grade crypto custody has absolutely exploded, and these trust companies have evolved. They're not the wild, wild west anymore. They're sophisticated, they have serious regulatory oversight, and many of them now function at a level that's comparable to national banks. Here's some context that's important. Wyoming issued guidance back in 2020 trying to address this, but the SEC was skeptical and that guidance got withdrawn in May 2025. So this new letter represents a fresh approach. The SEC is basically saying, we've watched this industry mature, we've seen the demand, and we're ready to provide clarity. It's a recognition that crypto custody isn't going away. If anything, it's becoming more important as institutions pile into digital assets. Now, here's the thing, this isn't a blank check. The SEC didn't just say, go wild, do whatever you want. They attached some very specific conditions to this relief. These conditions are all about investor protections, making sure that if you're going to use these trust companies, you're doing it responsibly. Let me break down the 5 main conditions. Condition 1, diligence and oversight. Advisors and funds must conduct initial and annual assessments of the trust company's ability to provide custodial services. You can't just set it and forget it. You need to continuously monitor whether they're doing their job properly. Condition 2, policies and procedures. The advisor or fund must believe that the trust company has policies that are reasonably designed to safeguard crypto assets. This means you need to actually review their internal processes. Condition 3, financial statements and control. This is a big one. The trust company must provide audited financial statements prepared according to GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles, and a SOC 1 report or equivalent covering their internal controls. This is about transparency and accountability. The SEC wants to make sure these companies are financially sound and have proper controls in place. Let's keep going with the conditions. Condition 4, risk disclosure. Advisors and funds must disclose the material risks of using the trust company to their clients or fund boards. And here's the key part. They need to determine that it's in their best interest. This is the fiduciary duty piece. You can't just use these custodians because they're convenient. You need to make sure it's actually the right move for your clients. Condition 5, custody agreement. There must be a written agreement that protects against unauthorized use or rehypothecation of assets. That means the trust company can't lend out or reuse your client's crypto without permission, and it must ensure segregation of client or fund assets from the trust company's own assets. Here's what you need to remember. The SEC staff emphasized that this relief is fact-specific. If you deviate from these conditions, their position could change. This isn't a suggestion. It's a requirement if you want this protection. Okay, so what does this all actually mean for the industry? Let's talk implications. Implication number 1, and this is important, but it was kind of expected. The industry has been pushing for this clarity for years. While it's definitely welcome news, a lot of people saw this coming, especially with the explosion of institutional interest in crypto. The SEC couldn't ignore it forever. Implication 2. This is a principles-based approach, not a rules-based approach. This is actually really smart by the SEC. Notice they didn't get super specific about technologies or custody mechanisms. They didn't say, you must use multi-signature wallets or you must use hardware security modules. Instead, they focused on principles, safekeeping, protecting against theft, protecting against loss, and protecting against misuse. Why does this matter? Because technology evolves fast, especially in crypto. If the SEC had gotten too specific, this guidance would be outdated in 2 years. By focusing on principles, this guidance can adapt as the technology evolves. Whether you're using multi-sig, HSMs, MPC technology, or whatever comes next, as long as you meet the principles, you're good. Implication number 3. Self-custody questions remain. Now, this letter doesn't directly address self-custody arrangements where advisors or funds hold their own private keys. That's still a bit of a gray area. However, the framework that's been established here could inform future solutions for self-custody. The principles are still relevant: safekeeping, proper controls, transparency. So what's next? Where do we go from here? This probably isn't the end of the story. The SEC's Spring 2012 includes custody rule amendments that signals that more comprehensive rulemaking is on the horizon. We can expect them to address things like self-custody arrangements in more detail, other innovative custody solutions, potentially other aspects of digital asset custody that this letter doesn't fully cover. Think of this no action letter as a bridge. It's providing immediate relief and clarity while the SEC works on more permanent, comprehensive rules. It's actually a pretty pragmatic approach. The industry gets to move forward with confidence now, while regulators figure out the long-term framework. And honestly, this is a sign of regulatory maturity. The SEC is acknowledging that crypto custody is real, it's important, and it needs proper regulatory clarity, not just silence or aggressive enforcement. Before we wrap up, let me give you some practical takeaways based on this development. If you're an RIA or fund manager, review your current custody arrangements immediately. Make sure you're meeting all 5 conditions if you're using state trust companies. This isn't optional. It's required for the no action protection. If you're a state trust company, this is validation, but it comes with expectations. Make sure you have robust policies, proper financial controls, your SOC 1 reports ready, and clear custody agreements with your clients. If you're an investor, this should give you more confidence in institutional crypto custody. The fact that the SEC is providing this clarity means there's legitimate regulatory oversight in this space. And for everyone, keep an eye on that spring 2025 regulatory agenda. The SEC is going to build on this foundation and will likely see more comprehensive rules coming. All right, everyone, that's the breakdown of the SEC's no action letter on digital asset custody. To recap, the SEC has confirmed that state chartered trust companies can serve as qualified custodians for crypto assets, provided you meet 5 key conditions around diligence, policies, financial transparency, risk disclosure, and custody agreements. This is a major step forward for institutional crypto adoption and provides the regulatory clarity the industry has been begging for. What do you think about this development? Are you excited about the clarity? Do you think the SEC should have gone further? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear your perspective. If you found this breakdown valuable, please smash that like button. It really helps the algorithm push this content to more people who need to see it. And if you're not already subscribed to GorillaEther, Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our future coverage of blockchain innovation and investment solutions. And hey, if you need help navigating the digital asset space, whether it's investment analysis, risk management, dApp development, or smart contracts, reach out to us. Check the description for our contact info or visit GorillaEther.com. Thanks for watching, and remember, in the blockchain world and in the crypto world, staying informed is staying ahead. I'm Tyra with Gorilla Ether, and I'll see you on the next one.